Welcome, everyone. I'm Scott Rogers. Call to order this Appropriations Committee meeting of September 9th, 2024. Or is that right?
Fifth.
5th. Yep, we got a printout on the misprint on the agenda. That's funny. I know what day it is. It's Thursday, September 5th. This meeting's being conducted in a hybrid mode. I do not have the full script in front of me, but it's pursuant to the acts of 2024 that were signed into law. To make sure that everybody can be heard and hear, I'll do a roll call of committee members. Jeff Knight here, George Brinkle
Here.
Bob Miko here, Tim Kalen
Here.
and Terry Halloran.
Here.
Also with us is Jason Little, Finance Director.
Present.
And Fire Chief Dave Parenti.
Right here, present.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Let me just start momentarily to welcome Terry Halloran. I would say welcome to the Appropriations Committee, recently appointed, but it'd be more correct to say welcome back, right, Terry? And reappointed. Terry was a member of the Appropriations Committee a while back. We won't say how many years back, and we'll keep his
It was a long time ago, guys.
his young age out there. So Terry, appreciate your service to the town and stepping up to work with us here on the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you. Glad to be of help.
Great. We'll start off with any public comment. If there's a comment or questions, if you're in the Zoom meeting, raise your hand, virtual hand, and if not, no one, not seeing any. We're good for public comment. Let's start off with meeting minutes. There was a small correction that Terry found in the spelling of council. We've got meeting minutes for April 22nd, which was our meeting just prior to town meeting, and June 25th. If there's no discussions or further corrections, we can even do a single motion for both minutes if anybody's inclined.
I move we approve the minutes for both the April 22nd and the June 25th.
Second. Motion by George, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor, let me do a bit of a roll call since we're hybrid. Jeff?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And Terry?
Abstain.
And Scott's an aye. Those motion passes. Great. Okay. The main work for us to do tonight is the review of two proposed warrant articles for special town meeting. The main content of those were put into the draft report, a file that was sent around earlier this week. Jason can tell us a little bit more about the first one, which is around the sewer settlement. There's not like a separate memo or anything like that to review. So mostly in the body of what you see in that draft report under sewer settlement. And I'll hand it over to Jason to just walk through that simple bit.
Sure. As you may remember, the single largest transaction this town has ever conducted at one time has been paying the city of Marlborough $7.5 million. And that was the result of this long-standing court case that had been going on as a dispute over the intermunicipal agreement for the Westerly treatment plant, where 100% of Northborough sewage is transported there and processed. Following the ex-assessor IMA being entered into, that there was a shortfall in the 24 budget when we received our reconciliation bill for FY24. And we expect again that the budget for 25 is short as well. So this article is designed to remedy that. And it's on the warrant as one article. I think we're going to be getting advice from council that's saying it's going to be broken into two motions as a result of one being for FY24, one being for FY25. They have different thresholds for passing. At a special town meeting, it requires a 9/10 majority to pass a prior year bill. And that's what 24 is going to be. 25 adjustment is going to be a simple majority. And that is, they're both going to be funded from sewer enterprise free cash.
And those kind of those bullets that Jason just mentioned in the last page of the draft report, there's a table. And the bullets about the fiscal year 24 and 25, the margins, and that are just kind of notes that help us
Okay.
document that. Yeah,
Okay, so we owe 148,336 more than was originally budgeted. So where's that money gonna come from again?
Sewer enterprise free cash.
And
What happens if town meeting, 90% of town meeting does not vote for it? What are we left with?
We
We
we'd
have
like
to pay it?
well, we'd likely be subject, we'd be in violation of our intermunicipal agreement.
So it's quite a heavy lift to get 90.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
a lot of those.
It seems non-controversial to me that it would be approved. The money will be in the bank.
Mhm.
I'm rushing to close the books so that I can get the free cash certified, so it's available, so that we can
Right.
vote to transfer it from sewer enterprise free cash. But the town has set their rates with the expectation it's going to have to pay these costs. So the money is basically in the bank. It's should be fairly incontroversial that we do this. We'd be in violation of our intermunicipal agreement. Again, this litigation has gone on for years, and it's really a major event that we got the successor IMA, and the settlement came out, and it came out in very much in Northborough's favor, being that it was a fair intermunicipal agreement that we entered into as a result of it, and then the settlement was a fair settlement. It was very much in line with our previous expired IMA that we had. So again, 9/10 seems like a high majority. Like we'll probably have to go back to annual town meeting where the threshold's lower to
Right.
act on it again. But again, I don't think 9/10. It sounds dramatic, but I don't think it will be as difficult.
So you're not losing sleep over it. Okay.
No.
Tim or Terry, any questions on the sewer settlement?
Nope.
That's great. If you don't mind then, folks, what I'd like to do is go ahead and take our vote on our recommendation for to special town meeting on this article before we move on to the next topic, since we've kind of tied this one up in a bow. So you see, I've got the placeholders in the draft report to record our vote. This is similar to what we did on the other annual town meeting warrant articles, where we're voting whether or not to recommend approval of the article at town meeting by the body. So I would take a motion on Article 1, the sewer settlement, and the transfer of a total of $248,336 split out, as Jason indicated.
I'll so moved.
All right, George with the motion, is there a second?
Second.
And that sounded like
Terry.
Terry.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just me not being smart enough about this whole thing. So again, we had a shortfall, 148,000, right? That we had to come up with the money. Is this something that's going to happen there? I mean, what is the trend? I'd like to see the trend. What is the trend of what we usually pay for the sewage?
Well, we pay generally, I believe it's about 35% of the plant's
Right.
costs.
Okay.
We won't know until the end of the fiscal year when we get a final reconciliation bill from the city for their costs for running the plant.
So
Yep.
all these years that we've been paying this, there was a certain number that we were paying. And now that was negotiated in this settlement that now that we're.
Right, basically the settlement, the $7.5 million was the sum total of multiple years of the actual reconciliations.
Right.
Through the IMA, we make 3 quarterly estimated payments to the city,
Right.
and then we make a final reconciliation payment once they've finalized their costs for the year.
But I thought this reconciliation benefited us in a way that we didn't have to pay what Marlboro was asking for. And now we owe money. That's what I'm a little confused on.
Well, the city is operating the plant, so we make the estimated payments that are below the total cost of operating the plant for the year. So we make 3 estimated quarterly payments, and then those come off of the top of the total assessment that we owe to the city. So that total assessment was higher than what we budgeted for FY 24.
Okay, so that's really a budget thing, not what,
Yeah, here's the way I think of it.
okay.
In that ever since the intermunicipal agreement expired, right? We've done our best in estimating what the cost to the city would be and adjusted the sewer fees to match that. So we've been putting away what is in effect became that final settlement amount all these past years through an estimation process, right? That carried through an estimation of what the fiscal 24 budget was going to be and the fiscal 25 budget was going to be. And all that was put in place before the settlement was finalized.
Right.
So now that the settlement's finalized, we know that amount. The new IMA has been finalized and we haven't agreed to rate structure in that. When you reconcile those things, we're 100 grand short. I'm sorry,
Scott, maybe I can,
148.
maybe I can
Am I
add
saying that?
one. There's one
well enough?
mitigating factor too, was during the expired IMA, we basically have paid $100,000 per quarter in the past as these estimates.
Mhm.
Our assessment is somewhere in the line of like 1.1 million, 1.3 million in that annually. And the biggest mitigating factor was the construction costs for expanding the plant back in 2010 or something like that. Those never entered it into a successor agreement to the 2010 agreement. So our costs have gone up as a result of our capital contribution to the plant. If that
Okay.
makes sense. The
It does
capital
a little
cost was
bit.
somewhere around $40 million, 30 to $40 million. So we're paying our share of the capital assessment as part of this successor IMA.
Okay, I guess my thought was I was under the illusion that we were paying more than we were supposed to pay to keep the sewage running until this whole thing got settled, and then there was.
The disconnect might be that they were billing us at a higher rate
Right.
than we
And
we
were
agreed
paying
to. No, we were not. We're continuing to pay the estimated payments that were as a result of our expired IMA, that we continued the practice from the
that.
expired
Okay,
IMA.
So,
basically.
so we were collecting from residents, the rates were set to collect for kind of like that worst case scenario.
Right,
But we were keeping it in our enterprise fund free cash
correct.
and not paying it over, but instead paying over what we thought was the fair amount. And now we know the amount, everything's reconciled, and this is what. Is that?
Correct,
Am I
yes.
understanding it? Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
for a number of years, we've had sewer free cash that was certified higher than the general fund's free cash. It was in about $9 million at one point. So we were billing, the ratepayers were paying the assessment, paying their sewer bills based on what we estimated the IMA was going to be. So we just collected this money, and it basically, and was the nature of my comment, that this money has been sitting in the bank. That's what it's intended for.
So if you look at it from the standpoint of, we made estimates of what we should owe for almost for 10 years. And if you look at it from the standpoint of over that 10-year period, we were off by $250,000 divided by 10. That means we kind of missed it by roughly $25,000 a year, which is pretty good for an estimate.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, I mean, I think that's kind of a fair statement, but the $250,000 is really just for 2 years. It's for 24 and 25 that weren't part of the settlement judgment that carried us through FY 23.
Right. But they were in other words, for 24, for those budgets, you estimated based on your best guess of what
Right.
the settlement would be.
It was it's a settlement of 24 of 1 year, 1
Okay.
year isolated.
All right.
So,
Okay.
Okay.
And then Bob, the other half of your question was then going forward, right?
Yeah.
Now that we have an IMA in place, now we have a solid expectation of what the costs are going to be going forward.
And that has now
And that'll be in
put
the
into the
budgets.
budgets now. Okay.
What's the term of the new IMA?
I believe it's 10 years, but I believe there's a renewal clause in it, so that it's not going to be as a fraught situation if the IMA expires without a successor being in place.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Great. This will be a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And Scott is an aye. That passes unanimously. All right, next topic, fire station construction. So this will be nominally Article 2. What we took advantage of is the sharing of the report, an updated report from the Financial Planning Committee. Thank you to Financial Planning Committee for that detailed report. Between the information in that report, what's available in terms of meetings of the Fire Station Building Committee, Financial Planning Committee, and other committees, there's a wealth of information out there, most of which is summarized in the video series that was put on YouTube. So in terms of our draft report a bit, what I did is summarize some of that information, refer to that information, summarize that information. And over the last few days, that's been adjusted as some of the additional cost estimates have come from the building committee and some additions to contextual information from financial planning, and done our best to align the two committee reports so that they're basically saying have the same background information. So we've got common information between the two. I kept our report a little shorter, and I'd like your input on if, when you compare to the Financial Planning Committee report, if there's something you think we should add, if you think there's something we should remove from our report, or it's just right, we can discuss those bits tonight with a hope that after we take our vote, we'll be able to talk about finalizing this report. So I reference the report as a way to give us some information to then discuss the fire station construction project and what would ultimately be our vote on our recommendation to special town meeting on the project. Chief is here if there's questions. We've got a member of the select board and fire station building committee here, as well as a member of financial planning committee here if there's any questions. But I'll canvass the room to see if there's any questions, additional information you all want to get.
Well, I have questions, concerns, and Chief, this isn't for you, this is more for Jason. Because I do think, I mean, I understand why this project is as expensive as it is. I understand the way the lot is. I understand all of that. And I think that the design committee has done a very good job in trying to kind of focus on the big needs. And that's not, my concern was more that we had a financial summit. And at the financial summit, I left kind of alarmed at the projected tax increases over the 5-year period. And so then I have done a lot of digging since, and I just really want to talk about the real impact, because we heard from department heads with their upcoming needs, which are significant. Obviously this is a significant need. The chief has more than convinced me of that. Massachusetts is already one of the highest taxed states in the country for property taxes. And in Massachusetts, the average for fiscal year 2024 is 1.11% of the average value of a home. We're up at 1.43, and we're going to climb up to 1.67. And we've been, up and down. But I guess as a jumping off point, before we do any of this stuff, we're already on the higher end of what value of our homes our tax rate is representing. And so, looking at it, and I also looked historically at what we've had since 1988, just in Northborough. But I mean, the highest statewide is 1.41%, and I think we're going to be skyrocketing well above that. But looking at Northborough's historical data, we've had a couple of years where we've just had massive tax increases, and I'm sure 2004, there was something big, some capital project in 2004 or around then, because we had a 17% jump in the tax rate. 1999, 11%. But the one thing I noticed is looking at historically is it doesn't go down again. It becomes a new floor, right? It's always going up. The impact's always going up. And the percent to value fluctuates also just based on value, the assessed value, right? So we've already been told that's going to be going up every year for the next 5 years. Am I right, Jason?
I'm sorry, what?
The assessed value.
The assessed value, yeah. Typically, I mean, the assessed values are based on the fair market cash value of real property, and those are going up.
Right. And I get the 5-year project. This fire station project is a 30-year hit. So, and right now, just looking at the 5-year projection, which also, correct me if I'm wrong, incorporated the needs of all the departments, like the projected needs, right? That's what these numbers did. This is from the Financial Summit, Future Impact.
Right, well, the yes and no. It was an exercise that used a projection for town departments. It used a factor of 3% for increases. The prior year was a significantly larger increase because there were a lot of unmet needs that got provided for in the FY25 budget. So we haven't begun the FY26 budget process yet. Given, you know, the presentations that we heard from department heads that everybody gave a presentation that included some form of what their future needs were going to be, and those were not quantified in the numbers. So this year's budget cycle is, we're going to start on that very soon, probably after we've closed the books on 24, so that we could move into 25 in good faith and start the budget process for 26. But we'll start quantifying those costs, and there'll be some policy decisions to make, whether we constrain or we move forward into, you know, a Proposition 2.5 override or something like that. Because again, our tax levy, our ability to levy taxes in order to pay for all these costs is controlled by Proposition 2.5, and that's a somewhat arbitrary limit because there's a quantification of overrides over time. It's based on a 2.5% increase on the overall levy for the year. So whether we move beyond that and can continue, it's a policy decision going forward.
Right. And I mean, and just looking at this in 5 years, we're looking at about a 30% increase in just the annual tax bill for most families. And I think, you know, when you look at, you know, because I was focused a lot on the tax rate, you know, ratio to value, because that's the value we have in our homes, that's there for us. But the thing is, those are unrealized gains, right? So that really does nothing for someone who's paycheck to paycheck, and they now in 5 years have their tax bill going up by about 30%. And I heard every single department head had some large need that's coming up, and who knows what's going to happen with the police station. So I guess, you know, where I'm coming is, we don't want to be chasing families out of this town because they can't afford to live here anymore. And this is just an enormous tax increase, which really gave me pause. I left shaken that night just of just how steep this is and the impact it's going to have on people. So I see where, you know, the projections show that it does trend with the way home values, but so do everyday costs that people have. So I think that I don't know. I think, you know, I went back through the minutes of meetings about the fire. I do think that they did what they could to reduce the cost. I think most of the costs are really just the things they have to do, the hard costs, right? That's where most of it is really going. So it's not an issue where I'm saying, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. But it's something that it's going to impact everything else. And all the departments have needs. They're all important. So I just wanted to really get us thinking about, and I hope financial planning is having similar talks, that this is a road we just can't stay on. So something's going to have to give. And, you know, for all the department heads, they're probably wondering like, who's it going to be, but it could be all of them. But I think it's going to get very real for people. Once we get a few years down the road and they see this tax bill go up, and it's not going to stop at 5 years. It's going to go on and on and on. And historically, I went back to 1988. It doesn't go back down. I could see a couple times where less than 1%, it might have stayed about flat or gone down by less than 1%, but pretty much it climbs every year. And even when you have years where it's a huge increase, near double digits or in double digits, which happened 3 times in that span, it never goes back down. That's just a new floor. And then, now we're just rolling it, and then we're going to raise it again. So it's just a cautionary advice to the administration, just that this is huge. I know it sounds good when you read it, and it's not, oh, we can do this, but when you really look at how it's going to hit people in the 5-year mark, the 10-year mark, the 15-year mark, it's severe. And that's before we do anything else. So I just want to throw that out there.
I agree 100%. I had the same thing. I left that summit a little bit shaken of what's happening with the demands. And I think we're in a position where we're going to have to set a target for our budget increases, and we're going to have to make some hard decisions of that list of needs, which ones are the ones that raise to the top of the priority and which ones we push off, because I don't think we can afford to do all of it.
Tim, you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the concern about the rising cost with everything that's going on. I would have to guess that Northborough is not the only community within the state of Massachusetts that's faced with these same issues, with infrastructure that's in serious need of repair, new fire stations, new school buildings, et cetera. I do think oftentimes when I consider these things, I think the two factors that drive home value and the type of community that we want to have are the investments that we make in education and the investments that we make in safety. Now, Boston.com just came out with their rankings for high schools in the state, and Algonquin was number 20 out of, I think it was 100, maybe 300 schools. Hudson was 89. So the communities that make investments in their schools, it comes through in the valuation of homes, because people will pay extra to live in communities where their children will get excellent educations. Northborough was also voted the safest community in the state of Massachusetts. That is something else that I think people will pay to have that level of safety. I think people understand that those types of things don't come free. You have to make investments in those areas. Now, if those don't align with your values as a homeowner or a family, then you're probably not going to be willing to pay the tax rates that we have in this town, and you'll choose to move to a town that's as maybe a lower ranked school system and isn't as safe as our community, so you can save money on taxes. Costs are rising all over every aspect of life. So I'm not, to have that sort of 30% tax increase over the next 5 years is, not the best case scenario by any stretch of the imagination, but it's all things that need to be done that align mostly with continuing to provide the education that we provide and continuing to provide the level of safety that we provide in the community. And that's just reality.
Could I just make,
Yeah, do say.
we were talking about some of the metrics from the financial trend summit that we did. And, to Tim's point of what's going on in Massachusetts in general, One of the measures that we looked at was that ranking of our tax bill among our neighbors and among other towns in the state. There's 351 cities and towns in the state of Massachusetts. And over that window of time where we may have had lower tax bill increases, we had a much higher tax bill relative to the rest of the state. So somehow Northborough is coming out with, I didn't see the Boston.com article about the schools that were 20th with the high school, but our tax bill is somewhere in the 70s now, like 71st or 72nd in the state, whereas been low, I think it's been in the 40s and somewhere in that window of time that you're looking back to and on that list of tax bills. So the point is that I was just trying to make was that this is happening everywhere. And I think a continually falling ranking among neighbors and the rest of the state shows that maybe there's pent up needs that have been built up in this community.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I agree with what, what Tim's saying. My family moved here for the schools. I'll also say though, that when the superintendent, when Greg gives his presentation, I mean, we see how much he's worked with his department heads, his principals to pare down their requests from, like I believe his approach has been very fiscally responsible. And I guess what I'm just saying is that, because I agree with Tim, this is safety. Public safety and education are the two driving factors. And that's why we love it here too. And I also agree that we have to do this. We need this fire station. And I agree 100%. It's just having this, and I think our debt is actually in pretty good shape too. I don't think that we're, our debt burden is not so dramatic, but this is how we're going to fund it. And I agree with Tim. People are probably going to be willing to do this because of how important it is. It's really going to, though, impact what else we can do. And I just think that what George was, I think, alluding to is we might want to come up with some guideposts that we use in budgeting to where by the time you're talking to us, you've already done that. Where similar to what the school's budget did, that you've already kind of made those priorities so they're clear, so we can, make the right recommendations and we can move forward in a healthy way to where we're not chasing people out of here because they literally can't afford to pay it. Because I think that could end up happening.
I've got
A hand up.
one item there, but I want to give I've got, I want to share what's in my head around what you just mentioned, but let me give Terry a chance.
Thank you, Scott. I've been on the committee for 2 weeks, and I did as much homework as I could in the 2 weeks that I could and looked at the financial summit numbers, and I came away with the same basic conclusion as to there's going to be a cliff as to what people are able and willing to pay for, and they will always pay for public safety. And this is not a question about the fire station per se, but as a message to the administration of the town, when you start talking about 2.5 overrides, whether they be operational or whether they be of a capital nature, you're asking for trouble. You're asking to pit one need against the other. And one of the things that I think as an appropriations committee, we should be counseling folks on is what can we do to avoid those types of scenarios? And sometimes it means that you're going to have to make exceptions as to, no, we're not going to do this anymore because it doesn't fit with that within the confines of 2.5. Overrides are not good. I'm going to go back to 25 years ago. Do you know why we all have green garbage bags? It was because otherwise we were going to be in 2.5. And then we're going to have the schools wanting this and the town wanting this. And it was a big dollar amount. So we could avoid all of that, all of those issues associated with a 2.5 override. Property taxes in and of itself are a regressive form of taxation. 1/3 of the households in this town of Northborough have household income of under $100,000. And as their property values increase, et cetera, through just the nature of our world, the burden on them becomes much, much greater. 25% of our citizens, it's close to that number, are over 65 years old. They're senior citizens. We have to be conscious of that as well. I think we need to make every effort to make sure that public safety and schools are protected as best we can. But when we go through an operational budget perspective, then there just needs to be some consciousness that not everything is affordable, and judgments and decisions will have to be made from that perspective. I was most concerned at the town meeting when I saw how much our excess levy limit capacity had decreased. In 23, we had 4.4 million, in 22, we had $4.4 million of excess capacity under the levy limit. In the 25 budget, it's down to 2.1. And projected in the numbers that I could find, we're down to 0.8 in excess capacity. Without having excess capacity under the levy limit, it does ultimately impact what your borrowing rates could be, what your bond rating might be. It's one of the biggest things that these bond companies look at in terms of assessing the financial stability of a town. I'm very concerned going forward, and look forward to working with all of you on the 26 budget, but there's some real decisions that are going to have to be made and some guidance that's going to have to be provided.
Thanks, Terry. So what's good on this is we haven't had a chance to talk since the financial summit, right?
Right.
So we're getting that context and background. And as much as we were, whether it was surprised, shocked, or whether we heard the unmet needs from departments, and that's something that traditionally we hadn't been hearing. So unlike the school department, right, where there's this canvassing from the principals and administration of all their needs, a preliminary budget that might be an 11% increase, 14% increase, something like that, and a process that takes it through to the final 4%, 3%, what it is. I think that's what we were seeing at the financial summit as well. We were hearing qualitatively from department heads what some of the needs were, right? And although it's way too early to have a quantitative look at that, we can model it with a 3%, which is kind of a model that we've used for kind of target increases. But we're seeing how that erodes in the levy capacity. But I think hearing those needs was a positive bit, right? We heard directly from the department heads, like we haven't heard in the past. So as eye-opening as it was, or as much of a oof, we got a lot going on, I view it as a really positive process thing, and a bit of direct from them, just what the needs are. Yeah, we're going to have some hard decisions to make, and I think collectively, we'll work on that, and I think that was the outcome of the financial summit,
Right.
that we saw. We heard more about needs. We talked more about other long-term projects, and that kind of sets the background and the context. So I'd like to we got that, right?
Okay,
And we
yeah.
know we know we've got that going forward. So if we bring back and talk, then okay, context of the bigger picture happening, this particular construction project for the fire station. And are there any other detailed questions about that? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I like to take the discussions in a different direction. When we go to special town meeting, and what if it doesn't pass? How much more would it cost the town to try to redo this, or has anybody looked into that?
Yeah, and I'll quote the chief, and he can nod if I got it right. But it's in the video too. Back next year with a 10% increase, right? Because construction costs are the need for it doesn't go away.
Right. So
Right,
that
and the
needs to be
construction
explained
costs
to the
continue
people
to pass.
that if we turn this down, how much more will it cost us even in the future, and raise the rates even further.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they can't even store the equipment in the firehouse. I mean, at the end of the day, like, they cannot continue to function in that firehouse. So, yeah, I mean, I think we just have to all accept that. And
But it's not a guarantee. They have to vote. And if we fail,
Right.
and it's 2/3, it's not
right.
majority.
And if we
so
fail, it's more expensive for something that we really do actually need.
that we're going to need, And maybe if we quantify what that expense is and how much more it costs us, maybe people will be convinced, well, maybe we should do it now instead of later. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point that was coming through both the
Okay.
building committee, financial planning, select board. I think everybody realizes that that sort of explanation,
Yeah.
right, is important. And I think that's why it's explicitly in the
Okay.
videos that were cut as well.
Good. Thank you.
And can I just make one
Yeah,
point
just-
for anybody watching this? And I know we brought up the concept of the levy capacity and that being a resource for that a town could be judged on. The approval of the fire station building project would be contingent on a Proposition 2.5 or debt exclusion, and that would not affect our levy capacity. It would basically we are able to raise the money in tax. I mean, it's still a tax impact, the same as any other spending article, but it would not affect our levy capacity, basically.
Yeah, and this is probably a good time for folks that might not have watched other meetings to kind of just lay out the process, I guess, in terms of a warrant article to appropriate the money at special town meeting. The amount that we're appropriating is the total estimated project cost, right? That it's and the financial projections that Jason has done and the modeling of the potential financing of the debt, right? All of those are estimations that we won't really know the specific dollar amounts until we have a project that's bid and awarded and we, have, and we go forward with a project. So although we put some very precise numbers in the bid, just so we can do some calculations, some estimates, that those numbers are gonna, the actual numbers are gonna, be in that area subject to awarding a contract. But that's just the first step in the process, right? The town saying that we're willing to appropriate the money. The next bit is what Jason mentioned, is then in terms of a ballot question to say, okay, the financing of this debt is excluded from the 2.5 considerations. And I think that's no different. That's exactly the same that we do on the other building projects, right? Or that we have done on the other building projects, especially Lincoln Street School. Mentioning Lincoln Street School, we had an appropriation amount. That project came in under budget. That money was returned and helped finance some of the design of the fire station and other things, I think. So this is the normal process. This is the way we do big ticket items like this in terms of appropriating the high water mark of our estimate that came through a very detailed costing process that I think was at our last meeting we talked a bit about. And then considering that to be excluded from our 2.5 levy capacity. Terry, help me out on that some more.
Yeah, and Jason, I totally agree, and I didn't mean to implicate draw the conclusion that this has anything to do with our levy capacity. That was speaking more to where we were from an operational expense perspective. But what I would love to hear a little bit right now, just given that we're talking about debt and exclusions, is just kind of give us an update, or at least me, some education as to the interest rate that you're utilizing for your for the estimates of the cash requirements on an annual basis, 4.25%. Where are we in terms of talking to our financial advisors? What have they said? Why do you think it's, some of the notes have seemed to say that it's somewhat conservative. What are you hearing these days in terms of their analysis of our situation to be able to borrow this much money at favorable rates?
Well, there's, I mean, it's a complex economic environment, and we talk to our financial advisors. We ask them, we told them the schedule, the amount, the cash flow that we have, and we asked them for their advice on how we should structure our debt. This project, the cash flow analysis from the project manager shows most of the cash being needed for the project, should it be approved, would be needed over the course of the next year. So this project, it looks like it's set to go pretty quickly once and if it's approved, we would likely go out for a bond, like we would market and issue a bond in June or somewhere before that. And again, we would talk to them again after the approval to get still, is that a good assumption in terms of timing? I know this is kind of a complex thing, and it goes, I'm not an investment person. I don't understand all of these things, but the belief that there are going to be Fed rate cuts is baked into us thinking that we're going to have lower rates than this 4.25%.
Okay.
Now, those rate cuts may not happen. But the rates are likely going to reflect that there's belief that those rate cuts are coming. So what we're hearing, and again, I'm kind of rambling, but I don't really have a lot of hard data to give
Okay.
as a
Fair
result
enough.
of those
Fair enough.
conversations.
Yep.
But we used 4.25%. That's what the financial advisors, we told them our schedule and the amount that we'd be going for. And it's likely probably going to be somewhat less than that.
Okay, thank you.
But in the interest of transparency and giving taxpayers an informed decision to make, we try to use the most conservative numbers possible so that people kind of see the worst case scenario.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. I just wanted to get your perspective as to where you were, and I'm just trying to get up to speed a little bit too. So I appreciate it very much. The other, I noticed that there was some analysis about 30-year versus 20-year. They didn't seem 20-year would work, or what was their thinking on that?
Well, there, at the time we asked, the rates they were seeing, they recommended using the same rate for a 20 and 30-year estimate.
Okay.
Obviously, if we make the policy decision to borrow for 20 years, it's going to be a much higher payment.
Right.
Over that year. The overall interest will be less because it's being financed over a shorter period of time, but the payment will be more. The tax impact will be more. And a project of this magnitude, I think we've, tried to model this, which was likely going to be a 30-year issue.
Okay.
And
thank you.
And running the numbers, I didn't have these before, but there'd have to be a 3.25% differential between a 20 and a 30-year to make the payments come out equal, so to speak. And that's
Which will never happen.
Very unlikely. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Jason, anything we should mention, just thinking of other financial items, this total amount that would be financed. We also have the possibility, on the rebates, especially for the geothermal.
Well, the debt projections we've modeled, we expect we're getting these grant funds. We expect we're going to get them in time so that we won't have a deficit in the fund balance of the project when we go out to bond. There's a possibility if there's a longer period of time, we might have to incur some short-term debt in order to finance the amount of the rebates until we receive the money. But the nature of the rebates are that we have to construct what we're applying the rebates for first before we get the grant money.
And so I guess that's, one example, in terms of the building committee and the town in general, looking at all the possible elements of rebates on heating and cooling systems, rebates on electrical vehicle charging, elements like that. And the town's going to continue to look for any opportunities to offset that, those costs as well. It helps. Any other questions or discussions on that? If not, I'll just kind of point us back to the draft report again. one thing that I tried to do, and you'll see it in that middle bit, that, it came up, in a couple folks, both financial planning, I think here as well, that for someone sitting in the audience, right? How would, we do a lot of our projections and our tax impacts based on the average value of a single family home. But the ability for someone to take their house value and kind of calculate for themselves. So that's where you see in the middle, an estimated 66 cents added to the tax rate. So that would give someone the ability to say, 66 cents per thousand on my assessed value. Jason has some estimates on what could be expected in the rise of assessed values in terms of 5% the next fiscal year, 2% after that. So there's a little calculation there that says, that's where we get to that estimate of the first year tax impact on the average value of $441. That then, because of the way that would be financed, we're paying down the principal, there's less interest every year, that would decrease to, do we still have the final number in there? Yeah, 202 in the final year. So if you take the average between 41, 202, that's the 321. So that's the kind of 300 some number that has been used as a kind of order of magnitude or rough number, that as it's gone through more and more detailed cost estimates, it's kind of been, average tax impact, 300 some dollars. It's higher in the earlier years, but drops in the later years. And so I did my best to try to explain that in the middle there.
And just to be clear, this is 441 additional tax impact that's going to hit in 2026 budget. In addition to that will be what's going to hit our 2026 budget for all the other things that we're going to do.
Other operational
So,
costs, right?
In other words, we're not saying it's only going to be it's going to be 441 more than what have been. So that it, looking at kind of what the numbers have been doing, this could be close to $1,000 increase in taxes in 2026.
I don't know, our historical increases,
What was last
300
year's?
Well, that's
something?
about right, according to Jason's projections, is
Yeah.
$953
So,
increase.
Well, they were,
that's the part that makes you nervous. It makes me nervous.
this past year, it was an increase of over $600 for the current rate, but this was an unusual year in terms of things being added to the budget for 25. In the past, we've had much lower tax increases, and that's led to our tax bill falling with respect to our neighbors and so forth. I kind of go around in circles on that point, but they've typically been lower. So to George's point, yes, you are correct. That is just isolated. The cost of this debt service would be
Right.
that impact, but the impact of the overall budget, the school budget, the town budget, the employee health insurance, the Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, all of those things, all of those increases are not part of that $441.
Right.
Terry,
So we are going to have
sorry.
to pay very close attention to, we have a lot of needs, but we also have to keep in mind what the impact is going to be. And we may have to really work very hard to prioritize those needs correctly so that we do the ones that are most important and we manage it so that we're balancing and we're not hurting our taxpayers too much.
Terry, you've got something.
I just wanted to add quickly, I love the table that the Financial Planning Committee used to describe the impact of on the taxes related to this particular project. I thought that was a nice way of illustrating it, close at hand for all spectrums of folks and different levels of incomes that they have. I do think that in the write-up that you've provided, Scott, one of the things that we should add in there is just indicate that this impact is before any other operational expense increases that you should expect. So it's full transparency to our to the taxpayers and to the residents in total. I think that would be I think that's just a fair thing to do to make sure that there's full transparency.
Okay, thanks.
And one other thing, I think somewhere in the write-up, you should indicate how the loan is being amortized. Because rather than try to confuse folks as to, well, there'll be a 2% increase in these assessed values, et cetera. I mean, the bottom line is basically between new growth and because we pay less interest every year, the overall impact on somebody each year will be lower at the end of the loan versus the beginning of the loan. It's just, I just think that should be a little bit more clear to folks.
And I think the easiest way to do that is I'll add that table. I'll add that table to our report because then it kind
Yeah.
of summarizes it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any intellectual property we have to worry about stealing. We can,
Yeah.
we can include it here.
Plagiarizing
And
is a really good
even
compliment.
a quick synopsis, so that people do realize that, you know, in year one, it's $1.4 million of principal and $1.7 million of interest, and just show a couple of examples so they get a full picture of what the cash outlay is to the town in different periods of the loan period.
Perfect.
Not the full amortization table, but enough of it that they can get an assessment.
Thank you, Terry. Any other questions before I ask for a motion? Great. So we have, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move that the Appropriations Committee recommend approval of Article 2, Fire Station Construction, with the cost of $41,364,992, contingent as described in the chart.
Second.
Moved by Jeff, seconded by George. We'll take that roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And Scott is an aye. That is a unanimous recommendation. Thank you very much. So the final bit is, as Terry mentioned, some, if folks have some edits to, changes to the draft report, my apologies in the kind of the moving target for you all. There was even some minor things that are in this print that you didn't see in the electronic version that was earlier in the week. There's a couple things we'll continue to clean up. I noticed a couple of typos. I will do those additions in terms of amortization table. Indicate that, this is just the tax impact of the fire station. There might be other, there will be other operational increases that doesn't reflect those. Anybody else have suggestions for improvements on the report?
Well, I think we should blame the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the new building codes for some of this and figure out how to quantify how much they've screwed us with this stuff. But that's just an aside and a matter of some humor. That's all.
We've been doing it
Blame,
for a while.
blame prevailing wages, please.
Okay.
Yep, that's a good one. Great. It's kind of a convention we have
need
then
a
that,
motion
yeah, that
to
we look to, you're
to
gonna
make changes
authorize
as
me,
needed.
yeah, to
Yes.
make changes.
I
as
move
needed.
that we authorize Scott to make minor changes to the report as needed. Second.
Moved by George, seconded by Jeff. Any comments on that?
No.
Great, we'll do that roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Thank you for that. We've got, I think overall, we're trying to hit a final report that can be delivered to the select board in time for their Monday meeting. So I think we've got enough runway on that. Jason, I'll have an update on this to you tomorrow.
Okay.
And then any other, we'll hammer out like we did this week on any other changes, but I don't see anything that prevents us from doing that. Any other business to come before the committee? Excellent. Chief, I didn't get a chance to say it, but thank you, sir, for all your effort on this project, working with the building committee, all of the land use and design and conservation and all the work you've done and the committee, building committee has done to put this forward. Really appreciate all that hard work on that.
Thank you. I apologize for the chiming in the back. It must be 8 o'clock. It's really the committee. They've done an amazing job. And I do want to apologize for not being in person. I said I was tied up in a fire. I'm ready to come home and get cleaned up. So I do apologize for not being there in person tonight.
I think you prioritize that work appropriate, sir.
Yeah.
I agree. Great. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Jeff, second. All those in favor, Jeff,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Bob? Aye. Tim?
aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
And Scott is an aye. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the effort you guys put into this. Have a good evening, everyone.